In just 1 year, China's answer to Starbucks has gone from Wall Street's favorite to toxic brew. Luckin Coffee raised $560 million when it listed on the Nasdaq last May. But it's lost more than 90% of its value after an inquiry revealed the company trumped up sales by hundreds of millions of dollars. Some US lawmakers accuse the Chinese government of facilitating this fraud, and they're designing new laws to protect American investors.
The Chinese Communist Party cheats, and the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act would stop them from cheating on US stock exchanges. We can't let foreign threats to Americans' retirement funds take root in our exchanges.
If the law is adopted, foreign companies would have to let US auditors review their accounts. They would also have to prove they aren't owned or managed by foreign governments. That could hurt online retailer Alibaba, internet giant Baidu, and other Chinese companies that depend on US stock exchanges to raise capital. The Trump administration also accuses telecommunications equipment maker Huawei of spying for the Chinese government. It's been banned from using US semiconductors and other technology.
The new rule will impact the expansion, maintenance, and continuous operations of networks worth hundreds of billions of dollars that we have rolled out across more than 170 countries.
Washington and Beijing appear to have buried the hatchet after a protracted trade war last year. But tensions have risen anew, with the US blaming China for the coronavirus pandemic.
China's contributions to fighting the pandemic are paltry compared to the costs that they have imposed on the world. This plague has cost roughly 90,000 American lives. More than 36 million Americans have lost their jobs since March. Globally, 300,000 lives could be as much as $9 trillion, according to our estimates. Cost imposition on the world by the Chinese Communist Party's failures.
In response, Beijing accuses Washington of politicking over the pandemic.
In the face of the epidemic, it is neither realistic nor wise to artificially cut off the global industrial chain and supply chain to change the economic rules with political power, or even to advocate transfer and decoupling. It will not help solve the problems faced by the US itself, but will cause more harm.
As both sides trade barbs, a quick compromise appears unlikely, leaving Chinese companies looking for investors and buyers facing bleak prospects. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Rui Zhong joins us now from Maryland in the US. She's the Program Associate for the Kissinger Institute on China and the United States at the Wilson Center. Welcome to Money Talks, Rui. Now, as we heard there, US President Donald Trump really is ramping up his war of words against China, blaming Beijing for the outbreak we're seeing around the world. Why do you think he's doing this using such strong and emotive language?
Well, tensions between China and the United States, especially at the high level, has stretched back since March, when we were beginning to see cases rise to a concerning level. And at this point, the COVID-19 pandemic has hit both China and the U.S.'s domestic economies very well. So really, it's in both Xi and Trump's advantage to really push this binary conflict narrative, because COVID-19 is a problem that's going to be sticking with China and the United States, their economies, their healthcare infrastructure systems for a very long time. And it's just plain easier to pinpoint the problem's epicenter in China, and for Beijing to pinpoint the epicenter in the United States. They've been spreading a lot of propaganda products aimed at Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. They've been spreading theories that the virus potentially originated outside China, naming the U.S. as a potential site of origin. And so this is really heated rhetoric that is flying both ways.
Now, for a while there, we saw tensions between the US and China really simmer down, particularly around their ongoing trade war. The two sides managed to sign the first phase of an agreement, and it looked like things were calming down. And of course, now we've got this coronavirus pandemic that has really escalated these tensions between the two economic giants. How do you see this ending? Do you think the US might scale back on its rhetoric against China?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that phase one of the trade deal resolved some of the matters that were easier to negotiate out. Specifically, what wasn't settled and was pushed to a potential phase two, which we're not sure when it's going to happen, were some of the structural issues for the U.S. asking. This asks for China to make it easier to access markets or to curb tech transfer. But for China, those issues are really core to indigenous innovation efforts and China's own sort of economic health. And so this was something that they were at an impasse at, even when things were going well in phase one negotiations.